I just wanna Rebecca to be like a wife, a real wife.
How am I not a real wife? You don't get to say that I'm not a real wife and act like I'm the goddamn problem.
You see how she get it? That's why I drive to Virginia.
Zied telling Rebecca that he wants her to be a real wife sounded like one catastrophically bad sentence. But the more he tried to explain it, the clearer it became that this was not only a translation problem. And the more Rebecca tried to defend herself, the clearer it became that she was not really hearing him either. Rebecca believes she has already proved that she is a wife. She works brutal hours, keeps the bills paid, and says she has built a comfortable life for both of them. In her mind, that sacrifice is love. So when Zied says he does not feel like he has a real wife, she does not hear "I miss you." She hears, "Everything you have done for me means nothing." But Zied is describing a different marriage. He wants conversation, shared time, attention, and the feeling that he is living with a partner instead of sharing an address with someone who is always working or looking at her phone. Then he adds cooking and traditional wife duties, and suddenly the question becomes bigger. Is he simply asking for emotional connection? Or does he expect Rebecca to remain the main provider and still come home and perform the role of a traditional housewife? Rebecca has a contradiction too. She accuses Zied of saying things just to hurt her. Minutes later, she tells him he is not a real husband because she wants him to feel the same pain. So this fight is not about dinner. It is about labor, gratitude, gender roles, loneliness, trust, and two people who never agreed on what marriage should look like. No resort, camping exercise, or handcuffed romance can solve that for them. At first, Rebecca and Zied actually look better. They hike together, set up the tent, stay away from their phones, and seem playful instead of irritated. The other couples notice it. Everybody jokes that therapy is working, or maybe the bedroom homework performed some kind of miracle. But their temporary peace tells us something important. Their relationship improves when real life is removed. That is not proof that the marriage is healed. It is proof that the marriage functions better when its pressure points are temporarily taken away. The moment Zied explains why he is happier, the mood changes. He says Rebecca is not working and is not spending all her time on her phone. To him, this is the answer. He enjoys the resort because his wife is finally present. Rebecca immediately becomes defensive, and I understand why. She hears criticism of the very thing she believes is keeping their life together. She is not working long hours because being exhausted is her hobby. From her perspective, somebody has to pay for the lifestyle. So when Zied says he hates that she works so much, she probably feels he wants the benefits of her labor without respecting the cost. This is where their definitions of love collide. Rebecca is basically saying, "I love you because I provide for you." Zied is saying, "If you loved me, you would spend time with me." Both statements contain truth, and both become dangerous when treated as the only definition of love. Providing financially matters, but paying bills does not automatically create emotional intimacy. Wanting intimacy is reasonable, but demanding more time, attention, cooking, and emotional energy from someone who is already exhausted is not a complete solution. Something practical has to change. That is the question Zied never fully answers. If Rebecca works less, who covers the missing income? If she comes home earlier, does he take on more financial responsibility? If she is too tired to cook, does he cook? If they dislike the same food, can they plan shared meals instead of turning dinner into proof of whether she is a proper wife? Asking for connection is fair. Asking for connection without offering a plan to reduce the other person's pressure is not enough. And this is why the phrase real wife hits so hard. Zied could have said, "I feel lonely." He could have said, "I miss spending time with you." Those sentences would still hurt, but they would describe his feelings. Instead, he gives Rebecca a verdict on her identity. He does not say the marriage feels empty. He says she is not a real wife. Now Rebecca is not defending one behavior. She is defending her worth as a spouse. Yes, the language barrier matters. Zied needs time to process complicated questions and express emotion in English. The therapist reminds Rebecca that she has to let him finish. But the language barrier cannot erase what he explains afterward. He says they do not talk. That sounds like loneliness. He says she works all day. That sounds like emotional absence. Then he says she does not cook for him. That sounds like a traditional expectation. All three can be true at once. This is not simply a sweet husband asking for quality time and accidentally choosing the wrong words. His idea of marriage seems to include emotional companionship and a more traditional domestic role for Rebecca. The problem is that Rebecca is not living as a stay-at-home wife. She is living as the person who says she is carrying the heavier financial burden. So Zied may be asking for two systems at once. He wants the lifestyle supported by Rebecca's labor, but he also wants the attention and domestic care that would be easier if she were not working those hours. That contradiction is the heart of the argument. But Rebecca must face her own contradiction. She says she wants to understand him, yet the way she demands answers makes understanding almost impossible. The second Zied says real wife, she wants an explanation immediately. She is angry, embarrassed, and hurt, especially because this is happening in front of everyone. She keeps pressing him. The more pressure she applies, the less clearly he speaks. His unclear answers make her even more suspicious. This is the pattern trapping them. Rebecca feels distance and demands immediate engagement. Zied feels overwhelmed and struggles to respond. His delay feels like rejection, so she increases the pressure. Her pressure feels like an attack, so he becomes more frustrated or withdraws. Rebecca is afraid he is emotionally leaving, so she pushes harder. That pressure makes him want to leave the conversation. Zied is afraid he cannot speak without being attacked, so he holds back. His silence convinces Rebecca he is hiding his true feelings. Then Shekinah steps into the middle, because apparently one marriage argument was not enough for the campfire. She tells Rebecca to stop interrupting and give Zied time. Shekinah is not completely wrong. Rebecca is interrupting. Zied does need time. Even the therapist later makes the same point. But Shekinah is the worst possible messenger. Rebecca already distrusts her intentions. Instead of hearing, "Let your husband finish," she hears, "This woman is taking his side against me." The conversation then stops being about Zied. Rebecca and Shekinah argue. Sarper tells Shekinah to stop. Shekinah feels unsupported and leaves, and the original issue is buried under another conflict. That scene perfectly demonstrates the problem. Even when Zied finally expresses something vulnerable, the environment becomes so emotionally loud that his message disappears. Still, Rebecca cannot blame Shekinah for what happens next. After the group calms down, the therapist reminds her to give Zied time. Rebecca is already too angry to hear it. She changes from seeking clarity to seeking revenge. She tells Zied he is not a real husband. This is one of the most revealing moments in the scene. Earlier, Rebecca says Zied says hurtful things when he is angry. She presents that as one of his biggest flaws. But when she feels wounded, she immediately uses the same weapon. She is not calmly explaining how he has failed her. She is saying, "Let me make you feel what you just made me feel." That is emotional retaliation. Once a couple uses pain as a teaching tool, communication becomes punishment. The goal is no longer understanding. The goal becomes balance. You hurt me, so now you should hurt too. Rebecca may believe she is helping him understand the impact of his words, but explaining an injury is different from recreating it. A healthier version would have been, "When you say I am not a real wife, it makes me feel like my work and sacrifice do not count. How would you feel if I reduced your role as a husband to one thing you are not doing?" Instead, she delivers the same identity-level insult. Zied raises his voice, and Rebecca then treats his volume as the new central offense. This is another reason their fights never end. The subject keeps changing. First, it is lack of time. Then it is whether Rebecca is a real wife. Then it becomes Shekinah's interference. Then it becomes whether Zied is a real husband. Then it becomes Zied raising his voice. Nobody solves the first problem because every reaction creates a new one. Their arguments do not move toward resolution. They collect injuries. The financial side makes this even more complicated. Rebecca uses paid bills as evidence that she is doing her part. And she has a point. A marriage cannot survive on quality time alone. Rent does not accept emotional intimacy as payment. Somebody has to handle practical reality. But financial provision can also become moral power. When one partner says, "I pay the bills," the hidden message can become, "Therefore, you should not complain." Zied may feel materially supported but emotionally managed. If Rebecca reminds him of everything she provides whenever he expresses unhappiness, he may feel he is not allowed to have needs because the bills are paid. Rebecca holds the stronger practical position. Zied holds another kind of leverage, emotional withdrawal. She can say, I keep this life running. He can say, I hate this life. Both statements carry power. Both can make the other person feel trapped. Trust is also sitting underneath this argument. Their relationship has already dealt with cheating suspicions, monitoring, distance, and periods where they seem to be living like separate people. Rebecca is not hearing Zied's dissatisfaction in a neutral way. When he says he does not feel like he has a real wife, she may hear, you failed me, so I am justified in looking elsewhere. When she questions him aggressively, Zied may hear, nothing I say will ever make me trustworthy in her eyes. So the fight is happening on top of a damaged trust system. Many viewers are divided for exactly this reason. Some fans feel Rebecca is controlling, loud, and unwilling to let Zied finish. They believe he has been emotionally checked out for a long time, and that her pressure makes honesty almost impossible. Other viewers are strongly on Rebecca's side. They say Zied seems to want a traditional wife while benefiting from her income. They question why she should work extreme hours, pay the bills, come home exhausted, cook food he approves of, and still be told she is not performing marriage correctly. A section of the audience believes the conflict is mainly a language issue. They think Zied meant a present or connected wife, not a real wife. Another section is not buying that explanation. They point out that after getting time to clarify, he still mentions cooking and traditional behavior. For them, the language barrier may explain the harsh phrase, but it does not erase the expectation. Zied is lonely, Rebecca is overworked. Zied's wording is insulting, Rebecca's reaction is destructive. Zied may want emotional closeness, and he may also want an unfair domestic arrangement. Rebecca may be sacrificing for the marriage, and she may also be using sacrifice to avoid confronting how emotionally empty the relationship has become. Zied returns to loneliness because it may be easier to explain than the full complexity of what he wants. He may not completely understand whether he wants companionship, traditional roles, more respect, more freedom, or simply a different life. When he reportedly says he hates his life so often, that is a major warning sign. Those words are bigger than a complaint about dinner. If someone hates their life most of the time, the problem is not one missing meal. It suggests resentment has been building for a long time. And if Rebecca truly believes he deliberately tries to hurt her, that is another warning sign. Once you believe your partner is intentionally cruel, every disagreement becomes a threat. Long term, the biggest danger is emotional exhaustion. Zied may stop explaining because he expects every conversation to become an interrogation. Rebecca may work even more because home feels like a place where her effort is criticized instead of appreciated. He becomes lonelier, she becomes more resentful. He withdraws, she pursues. Together they create the separate lives they both say they do not want. For the rest of the season, I expect the gender role debate to continue. The therapists will probably translate real wife into specific needs. Maybe Zied will clarify that he wants shared meals, planned time together, or less phone use. Maybe Rebecca will agree to protect a few evenings for the relationship, but compromise only works if the labor changes too. You cannot tell someone to work less without discussing money. You cannot ask someone to cook more without discussing who handles other responsibilities. You cannot demand quality time while turning that time into conflict. And you cannot rebuild trust if every difficult sentence becomes proof that the entire marriage is fake. I do not think one argument automatically means Rebecca and Zied will break up. They have survived major fights before. Couples like this often stay together because the conflict itself becomes part of the bond. They separate emotionally, panic, reconnect, promise change, enjoy a peaceful period, and return to the same unresolved structure. The bigger question is not whether they love each other. They probably do, in their own ways. The question is whether their versions of love are compatible. Rebecca wants her effort to be seen. Zied wants his loneliness to be seen. Rebecca believes stability proves commitment. Zied believes presence proves commitment. Neither is completely wrong, but both keep turning unmet needs into accusations about the other person's identity. That is why one sentence destroyed all the progress they appeared to make. It did not create the problem. It exposed the problem already there. Rebecca and Zied are not fighting about whether she cooks enough. They are fighting about what makes someone a wife, what makes someone a husband, whose sacrifice matters more, and whether love should be measured by money, time, attention, or obedience. Until they create one shared definition of marriage, Rebecca will keep feeling used and unappreciated, while Zied will keep feeling lonely and trapped. So what do you think? Is Zied asking for reasonable emotional connection but expressing it through outdated expectations? Or is Rebecca using financial provision as a shield so she does not have to admit how emotionally absent this marriage has become?